Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome back to the Srimad Bhagavatam. We took Sunday off yesterday. Our daily yoga podcast skipped a day yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking at me like that didn't happen. That happened. We didn't have a show. I mean, without the show, do you ever have those moments like, where's the podcast? And you're just like walking around in a fog. Who am I without the podcast? If you're new to the show, welcome. We have some people coming over from Rich Roll and from Tinfoil Hats, which are two podcasts I was on recently. And I hope you had a good weekend. We had fun. We had people over the farm, Lori Pag and the chief and family and others were building stuff, getting ready for our Seba weekend.
I saw the photos.
It was a pre-end. We had a big kirtan Friday night.
You had the violin out?
I had my violin out. I got better at the violin.
Yeah, you did.
Ramaswamy's been giving me mystical powers on the violin. And that's that. It was, yeah, I mean,
I think that's a large part of that's who you are. And I think you there on the farm, bringing people in, kind of keeping the show going. I think that's a large part of what you should be doing in this world. You know? Being that guy, getting the kirtan going. Huh?
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
I like it. I like it.
I got a new tractor last week. I'm feeling good about that. I don't like many things with this material. Not many things in the material world like turn me on, but I'm really happy about my tractor.
The tractor, Raghunath. Don't get me started about the tractor.
Prabhu.
Not serious. It was the tractor.
You got to take what you get and use in Christian service. Or else I'm going to start going off on your microphone, okay?
No. The microphone is a different thing, Raghunath. The tractor.
You want to open up this box right now? We can.
In other words, a cow can't do what this microphone does.
I understand. Are you ready to invest your time with working oxen?
Well, I don't own a farm.
All right. Okay. So when you have a lot of land and you have one person, then you get a tractor. If I had lots of people
had all
that
these
lived
kids
here and lots of people that did, my kids aren't going to work oxen. Are you kidding? You have
should
kids?
have trained them up. That's because you had a tractor.
Kids? You have teenage kids? Everybody out there has got teenage kids. Tell me how much they're going to work oxen for 8 hours a day.
That's because you trained them up on the tractor.
I told you not to open this can of worms.
I bet you Sachi would have done it. She loves the animals.
I can tackle this with you.
Right.
She loves cows, and that lasts about 45 minutes. The cow's just wandering around eating all your plants, eating your bushes and your hedges and your lilies.
Enjoy your tractor.
Anyway, good morning, everybody. It's good to be back. Announcements I want to shout out this morning is me and Kastuba taking a group to India. Check out my website, raghunath.yoga. If you want to go to India or Nepal with us this autumn. And Wisdom of the Sages retreat coming up at the farm. Great way to celebrate spring. A lot of people are registered for it too. And we always have a really fun get together, me and Kastuba. All this like tension me and Kastuba have on air, we take it out personally. We wrestle each other. We roll down the back hill. We laugh. We enjoy. It's fun. You can see that wrestling match happen if you come to the farm.
Okay.
All right. Any other announcements from Miss Mara?
Yep. We have back to recovery group meetings today at 1, 2, and 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
We also have meetings in person in Mayapur, Alachua, Nashville, and New York City.
We're doing it.
And we'll be
We're
on
not
at
doing-
7 a.m. for the rest of the week.
Okay. That's good. All right. We're going to start off with a little nugget today. And this is an interesting nugget from Martin
Reverend.
Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Very interesting nugget, huh?
I got more than this nugget, Raghunath, that I can.
You got more than this nugget? Okay.
Yeah, I got more than this nugget.
All right. So here's what Martin Luther King says today. You know, if you're new to the show, we do a little nugget, a little piece of philosophy that sort of has to do with the verse we're going to in the course of the day, in the course of our reading. But we just show how sort of truth is universal and comes from different sources. And sometimes those truth, there's a Venn diagram where truth just lines up. If it's truth, it will line up perfectly with Vedic teachings. So here's Dr. Martin Luther King. He says, I studied personalistic philosophy, the theory that the clue to the meaning of ultimate reality is found in personality. This personal idealism remains today my basic philosophical position. Personalism's insistence that only personality, finite and infinite, is ultimately real, strengthened me in two convictions. One, it gave me metaphysical and philosophical grounding for the idea of a personal God, and it gave me a metaphysical basis for the dignity and worth of all human personality. That's pretty. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah. I'll read more that he says, but even just right here, I think, you know, what a lot of us will find it most significant is this last line where, you know, it gave him a metaphysical and philosophical grounding for an idea of a personal God. Okay, that's your theological belief, your faith, whatever you want to call it. But then he says how that faith plays out in the world. And he says it gave me a metaphysical basis, not that this is grounded in something that, you know, his idea, his basis for his idea, that every human being has inherent dignity and inherent worth, is grounded in this metaphysical idea that there's a person behind everything, right? And that we are all persons in relation to that person. This quote goes a little bit further. This is from, I suppose, a speech or an essay that he wrote called "Where Do We Go From Here?" He says, the image of God is universally shared in equal portions by all men. Every human being has etched into his personality the indelible stamp of the Creator. Every man must be respected because God loves him. The worth of an individual does not lie in the measure of his intellect, his racial origin, or his social position. These are what we call upadis, right? In this, you know, the yoga terminology, right? False designations, temporary designations.
Temporary designations, yeah.
Not, which aren't the ultimate real reality. You know, in the earlier quote where he said that I studied the personalistic philosophy, the theory that the clue to the meaning of the ultimate reality is found in personality, right? Like the reality, these temporary things are, in a sense, unreal. But the ultimate reality is found in the person behind everything. The person behind every body is a soul that's animating and making it come alive. And then if you go further back, you find that there's an original person that, as he's referring to here, is the Creator, right? Every man must be respected because God loves him. The worth of an individual does not lie in the measure of his intellect, his racial origin, or social position. Human worth lies in relatedness to God. Nityo nityanam, chaitanas chaitananam, eko bahunam vividati kaman. That there are many eternal beings, there are many conscious beings, but they are all dependent, they're all connected, they're all intrinsically connected to that one being. Whenever this is recognized, right, that we're all connected to one divine source, whenever this is recognized, whiteness and blackness pass away as determinants in a relationship, and son and brother are substituted.
Mm.
Nice, right? When we recognize our connection and everyone's connection to that one, then we recognize that we're all connected to each other.
It's amazing how in bhakti philosophy and lifestyle, we raise that bar even a little higher, because we're seeing personality in plants, in trees, in animals. And it's not just the pigment of our skin, which was like everything he was facing and working towards smoothing out. But now this new, where the world is turning now, that all these other living beings have dignity, and we should give dignity because they have some worth. And this is the vision of the yogis, that everything is a living being struggling to survive, and therefore we treat it with dignity and love. And not only the skin color or pigment or lack of pigment, etc., is secondary, but the species itself is secondary. And this is why the yogis tread lightly in this world, because we realize we don't want to cause pain to any living being. And then we get to this point of accepting that just to exist, we're causing pain. So we realize you can't be an absolutist about this too. We want to travel as lightly as we can, leave the smallest footprint as possible on this planet. And it's sort of our philosophy is not that just God is a person and I'm a person, or that God is a person, I'm a person, and other human beings are persons, but that personality is behind everything. And that's a very beautiful thing, because that way we get to smash away any differences. Because how do we find connection or unity? It's got to be on a more subtle level than our body, our skin color, our species, our race, our gender preference. It's got to be more and more and more subtle. It's not mental. It's not intelligence. Those things will never be equal, right? Mara's smarter than me, but it's got to be on something much more subtle. Unity and connection can't be done on any other material platform. We're just not that, or unity or equality. No one's equal. Twins are not equal. But at the same time, the spirits, that's where we find our commonality. And that's where we find what's next. When you find commonality, is you treat each other in a spiritual way, with a type of dignity, a type of respect. And we realize that because we're all cut from the same cloth, we're all part of God. Therefore, we actually have a lot in common with everybody. Everybody is going through the same things that we're going through. We're going through gain and loss. We're going through betrayal, heartbreak, falling in love, gaining wealth, losing wealth. We're getting old. We're getting some disease, some chronic disease. As different as we are, we're so similar in so many ways. And we learn to live with people. And instead of breaking into different tribes that are repulsed by each other and trying to find where our tribe is better, we learn to find some commonality in the living beings. And that's why I think it's important to work with plants and animals. You start to see their personhood behind their furry face.
Okay.
Think of that, Kastuba.
I'm looking at the personhood behind your furry face.
Don't judge me for my furry face.
No, but that is, Martin Luther King he's saying that my beliefs that are playing out in his work and his relationships they had a metaphysical basis.
Mm.
Okay, so then what Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the Upanishads, etc., are laying out is a metaphysical basis for understanding how we can relate to the source of every living being and relate to every living being. And the deeper you go into that, like the tighter the focus gets, it's the kind of thing that you can focus in tight and then you expand the view as well, right? So you focus in from Brahman realization that God is everything to Paramatma realization that behind all the workings of the universe, there's this extension of the divine in every living being, right? Conscious and ranging and but 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita gets into all this, right? Witnessing, but also the permitter, the overseer, that there's a net, that creating the network that moves this incredibly intricate universe. And then if you tighten the focus still more, you find that Paramatma is an expansion of one being that manifests in unlimited ways, but it goes back ultimately to a person. It's still, and so Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he's going to say that tightening of the focus, that is what we call the confidential aspect of Vedanta. The greatest secret in all of the Shastras and all of the sacred texts has to do with understanding behind it all, there's that person. And Martin Luther King is saying, when I understood that, it made me understand, then he can widen, then you can kind of, again, widen the scope. How that helps me see everything and everyone. And how should that work? Not in a sectarian way. Not I've understood God, you don't understand God. God is in my church, not in your temple, whatever. No, that you begin to see the presence and the energy of that God in everyone and in everywhere. And it should be a healing thing. It should be something that heals conflict rather than creates conflict.
I would love to see Christians take this seriously about animals. Like to see personhood in
Well,
animals.
not just Christians. I think everyone, right? But
no, well, I'd like to see Christians because I already believe in God.
yeah,
I'd like to see everybody.
A
But
lot
I'd
of
like to
other
see
religions
Christians.
out there
I'd like
too.
to see them just shift that and be like, oh wow, that's a point there. Actually, oftentimes I find with Christians, and we have some Christians on the show. I find that they have this personhood in God and a personhood in humans, but everything else, and a personhood in Christ, but everything else is just sort of mechanical, mundane.
Right.
And then to say there's personhoods in a weeping willow tree, that would be considered paganistic. You believe in all these other gods or polytheistic, but it's not. It's that everything is spirit, but there is one divine spirit. There's one source of all spiritual entities.
Yeah, that this metaphysical basis, what it's going to show is that actually the entire universe is one big body, right? The universe itself is a living body, and it has a soul, right? And that soul is that same Paramatma, the same soul within my heart and in your heart and within the heart of the dog and within the heart of the tree. If the tree had a heart or whatever in the roots of the tree or within the tree, that's the same universal soul represented in unlimited ways. Just as the example sometimes is given is if you have many pots of water and the sun is shining down, then the sun is represented within every pot. And so that universal soul is represented is present within the heart of everyone and every living being. And yeah, so we should ideally see that there's an evolution that's meant to take place as one goes into deeper spirituality. And it's a maturation, right? Of like, I don't just see God just in my church or just in my sect. But as one matures, as one really comes into contact with the true substance, the true spiritual substance, or the true person behind it, then it's meant through the practices, the meditations, the rituals, the teachings of the texts, the example of those that practice it. One's meant to open oneself up to the transformative contact of that and mature from the sectarian view that's centered on like external religious symbols, which we call Kanishta Adhikari, right? Like the neophyte spiritualist, the
see
beginner.
God in the church, we see God in the temple, we see God in the mosque, but we see these other people as different from me.
Yes. What one is instructed that as quickly as possible, one is meant to mature from that immature spiritual vision and try to come to the intermediate level where you begin to have the ability to recognize divinity more broadly, unimpeded by sectarian judgments, right?
Mm.
Okay, I see that the same divine force behind everything that I recognize in my temple is also there in that church and in the heart of every living being. And actually goes beyond species, right? It's also in the other species. I can recognize that energy. You know, it's we'll get into it. Let's get into the verses because there's a lot of what Prahlad is, he's going to give 4 verses here, right? His father asks him one fundamental question: where do you get your strength? Right? I'm so powerful. Everyone's afraid of me. You're a little kid and you're speaking to me in such a disobedient way.
Mm.
Where do you get your strength? As a matter of fact, I've been trying to kill you and I've been having trouble doing it. Where do you get your strength from? He's furious, but he's demanding to try to understand this. And Prahlad speaks 4 verses to them, and there's just such a wealth of information and wisdom in what he says.
Mm. Okay, we're on text 8. Oh, okay. I didn't do the prayers, our morning prayers. Narayanam namaskritya chaivanarottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam dirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances after lotus feet. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 8, Text 8.
Why don't we just, he opened up with text 7. Why don't we just read that quickly again just to get the flow? The question was, by whose power has a rascal like you become so impudent that you appear fearless and overstep my power to rule you? That's what his
Just a little
father.
kid. How's he getting so powerful here?
Yeah.
Says, my dear, he's speaking to his father. My dear king, the source of my strength, of which you are asking, is also the source of yours. Indeed, the original source of all kinds of strength is one. He's not only your strength or mine, but the only strength for everyone. Without him, no one can get any strength. Whether moving or non-moving, superior or inferior, everyone, including Lord Brahma, is controlled by the strength of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay.
All these Shaktis, all these powers are ultimately coming from God.
And it's not that I have a power source and you have a separate power source and someone else, they've got their own power that they developed on their own. No, he's saying, you know, Prabhupada used this to help explain this. He used in the commentary the example of the sun, that the same heat, this, you know, the fire, the heat that you find within a log and the heat that you find within a piece of coal and the heat that you find with, you know, in all these different sources of fire, that they're all coming from one common source, the sun. Here, you know, not that I, you know, understand Sanskrit and poetics so well, but you can see that the poetry in this verse. He says, Nakevalam me bhavatascharajan, savai balam balinam chaparesham. Nakevalam, nakevalam me, not only in me, right? Bhavatascharajan, but also in you, O king, right? Savai balam balinam chaparesham, that the balam, the strength that's in me, is also, he says, balam balinam, the strength of the strong, the strength of anyone that has strength, chaparesham, and the strength in all others is coming from that one source. Okay. So it's a type of thinking that's just elusive to his father, He's just furious. He's going to go on. He'll continue with this message.
It's not just the strength, it's the strength, but what the individual does with that strength. Like everybody has some type of gift from the personality of Godhead. We're born with some, quote, God-given gifts. How we use them, that's where our free will. And if we're taking our gifts and not giving back with those gifts, this is a big problem. And you could say the whole Ramayana is on this principle, which is Hanuman, the pure devotee, is taking the gifts. He's taking Sita, who is Shakti herself, and giving her back to Ram. Taking Sita and giving back to Ram. Ravana, who's also powerful mystic yogi, is taking Sita for himself. Whenever we take our gift and use it for our ego, we create havoc, we create hell. And whenever we take our gift and use it in service, that's when everything becomes quite perfect in this world.
Yeah, when you deny, you see what Martin Luther King was saying is he's saying, I've got this metaphysical basis, and it's affecting how I relate to every living being, how I understand them, how I see them. When you deny that source, when you deny that every living being is connected to one source that energizes them all, gives them all life, and you deny that what I have, my strength, or as you're saying, kind of like my gifts, what I have to offer in this, there's no one for me in which I should feel gratitude. So that whole element of gratitude is just eliminated, right? Like
Sure.
Martin Luther King is saying, I'm grateful for whatever I can do, for my voice, for my intelligence, for my life, for my ability. I have a sense of gratitude to the person behind it all that gives me all of this. When you say this is all just developed out of a random, explosion of chemicals, that there's no one for which to feel grateful to. And now your metaphysical basis is completely warped, you know. Okay, let's hear what Prahlad says. Text 8.
Text 8. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the supreme controller and time factor, is the power of the senses, the power of the mind, the power of the body, and the vital force of the senses. His influence is unlimited. He is the best of all living entities, the controller of the three modes of material nature. By his own power, he creates this cosmic manifestation, maintains it, and annihilates it also. Okay.
So here he begins Ishvara, right? He mentions the Ishvara. Now, in the Yoga Sutras, when it speaks of Ishvara, right, which literally means the controller, but is commonly used to refer to God. And when the Yoga Sutras defines who is Ishvara, what is Ishvara, it starts by saying Purusha Vishesha, special person, right? Like it's a person, but it's a special person. Why special? Because it's the person that all the other persons are dependent on. It's the life that is the source of all other life. It is the energy that energizes. It's a personal energy that energizes every other person, right? So here he's saying the oja, the strength of the senses, the saha, the strength of the mind, the bala, the bodily strength, the indriya, all of the senses of the body. Just like we have a microphone here, or you have a speaker. They can't do anything until you plug them in to the energy source, right? So similarly, our eyes, our ears, our capacity to smell or to feel, texture or to taste. These have no ability to do what they do. They have no power unless they're plugged into the power source. And Prahlad is saying, my power source is the same as your power source. There's one power source behind it all. It's the Ishvara. It's the special person behind it all.
I'm going to continue. Text 9. So this is Prahlad speaking. My dear Father, please give up your demonic mentality. Do not discriminate, or just means to discern in your heart between enemies and friends. That's the
I think
big line
even
here.
here you could say more discriminate means, and don't discriminate in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
more the way we more commonly use it.
Make your mind equipoised towards everyone. Very powerful statement, right? Except
Yeah.
for the uncontrolled and misguided mind,
This
there
is a
is
powerful
no
statement.
enemy within this world.
Yeah,
Whoa!
say
Talk
that
about
again.
radical responsibility.
Yeah.
When one sees everyone on the platform of equality, one then comes to the position of worshiping the Lord perfectly.
Mm.
It seems like that should be it. Oh, okay, that's easy. It's not easy. That's why there's all these processes we go through. That's why we have like deity worship. It's not so you just worship God in a stone or in a carving. You start to expand that to all living beings. Our process is a process to actually create this. You can't artificially say, yes, I respect everybody the same. We actually have a methodical, systematic approach to actually getting your mind there. And it's not that cheap. It's a very, very high bar.
This verse is so. First of all, let's put it all in context, right? There are many. The Bhagavad Purana is a collection of so many different stories. Stories are told, and this is one of the most famous. And it's the tension is building up for chapters now, right? Like chapters ago, Prahlad started speaking on this philosophy. Like, I don't get this whole thing about friends and enemies. I don't see the world that way. I've heard that there are people that think this way. Now I'm hearing people speak this way. This is a very alien idea to me. It's actually not philosophically sound. I won't see that way. Now, his father became upset by that at first. He tried to have the teachers correct it. The teachers tried. Prahlad came back with the same message. He tried to kill him. They tried it in all these different ways, and somehow mystically they just couldn't pull it off. Then the teachers advised, let's just, this is probably just a phase. He'll pass through it. It wasn't a phase. As a matter of fact, it got worse because he started kind of convincing all of the other students in the school of the same kind of thinking. Now they brought him before his father again, and he's saying the same exact stuff. He's giving the same message, and he's giving the as Martin Luther King was saying, the metaphysical basis behind it all, right? I'm empowered by one person, you're empowered by that same person. The people that you consider your enemies, like Indra and all the devas, they're also empowered by that same, we're all the sons. That's what Martin Luther King said. What was it again? The last line of that, he said, human worth lies in the relatedness to God. An individual has value because he has value to God. Whenever this is recognized, whiteness and blackness, friends and enemies, it passes away as determinants in a relationship. And what is it substituted by? Son and brother, right? We begin to see every living being is related. So Prahlad's just saying, since we all come from the same source, since you and I, we're both blind. Our senses have no power without the same source lighting up my eyes, lighting up your eyes, right? The strength in our bodies, all of this is coming from that one person. So I can't see the way that you see. I can't see that. And this is so big that line. This I would just so love to see a really high quality production of this, and just see the fury when Prahlad says this statement. It's such a powerful, life-transforming statement, but it must have just completely angered his father that except for the uncontrolled and misguided mind, there is no enemy in this world, right? We only have one. And in other words, the idea that there is any living being that I have an intrinsically hostile relationship with, that doesn't exist in reality. It exists only in my mind, right? Behind the workings of my mind. And when we go into the realm of reality, there's nothing but harmony because everything's connected to that one source. It's only within this faculty of thinking that we have does that concept, it's only in a mind that's uncontrolled by the wisdom of the sacred text and misguided by external sources of information that one conceives that I have an enemy in this world. It's a powerful, powerful sentence.
There's something also beautiful in people that are grateful. They're grateful for what they have. They appreciate what they've been given. They let you know it. And there's something very beautiful in that. When people think like, well, I've got what I've got because I've earned it. I've got what I've got because I've worked hard for it. I've got what I've got. We've got what we've got by the mercy of other people. And when we start to accept that everything is actually the mercy of another, it changes it changes everything. And what a beautiful culture that is. There's something very, very ugly about these not wanting to accept that your power, your source of opulence is coming from something else.
Right. No, that's
Right.
such a good point, Roland. Yeah. If we dip into the commentary here, Prabhupada writes this. He says, we create enemies and friends according to the dictation of the mind, but actually there are no enemies and friends. Now he quotes two verses from Bhagavad Gita. He says, Pandita Samadarshana, that the wise see with equal vision. And he says, Samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param, which is 1854. Being equally disposed towards every living being, one comes to the pure state of bhakti, right? Mad bhaktim labate param, right? This is all connected to, because the verse, he wrapped it up by saying, when one sees everyone on the platform of equality, when one has that metaphysical basis of how to see everyone, he then ties it back into the religious thing. One then comes to the position of worshiping the Lord perfectly, right? Without that understanding, the religious externals aren't the important thing. It's this clear metaphysical basis, this clear understanding. Every living being, right, I'm seeing equally. Now, only then is one capable of, you could say worshiping, you could say pleasing, of working, relating harmoniously, being in harmony with God. Right. So he quotes those two verses. Just such a, I really appreciate what you're saying. Is it's always trying to understand. It's stepping back and understanding what lies behind, right? Like what lies behind. If there's a light bulb that's lighting up a room, we can say, where does the light come? It comes from the light bulb.
It comes from the light bulb.
Yeah. Okay. But where did the light bulb get the power?
It comes from the light bulb.
A wiser person could say, there's got to be a generator behind it, right? And where does that generate? Like, let's say you have a generator and it's fueled by coal. Well, where did the coal, get its energy from? It got it from the sun,
Right. You can always take it back a notch.
You can always take it back. It really, we say, this kind of skips a level. Prahlad is skipping some levels, right? Because where do we get the power of the senses? We say it comes from the devas, right? The vision comes from the god of the sun and so on. But where do those devas get their power? Well, they get it all ultimately from Vishnu, and who is Vishnu, an expansion of Krishna.
And a lot of Hinduism is to worship that Shakti, that power, to get some power. So I'm worshiping the Shakti, I'm worshiping the Devas and the Devis, and they get some power. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna sort of crushes that idea and says, okay, you can worship them, but you should first understand it's all coming from me. Even their powers are also coming from me.
Right. And Prabhupada says here to recognize that, to recognize the equality of every living being based on that. He writes, to understand this is the preliminary condition for entering into the kingdom of devotional service, for entering into the realm of bhakti. Right? It's based on this metaphysical understanding, but we could say understanding, but actually the realization, right? That Not just understand it theoretically, but that I really understand it. Okay. Text 10.
So that last line is, when one sees everyone on the platform of equality, one then comes to the position of worshiping the Lord perfectly.
Samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param.
Therefore, there's no room for hate as well. There's no room for hate. And even like when you and I are ministers or preachers of the holy name, and when you go into a conversation with someone you meet, we are searching out some common ground. They might say a bunch of crazy things, and we're overlooking it and going right for some common ground that we can hold on to. And from that common ground, then we can start expanding the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. But first, there's got to be some common ground. So we're again searching for the commonality. The world gets hung up on our differences and creates hate, and that becomes just like a dam in the river to flow. There can't be any flow in life if we're always going after how we are different. The devotee will look for the commonality and find something we have in common with someone, and then start sharing the philosophy from that. And you believe in animal rights? You believe in animals are living beings? Okay, we get that. All animals are spirit souls. You believe in unity. You believe in, it doesn't matter what race you are. Yes, because we're all spiritual beings. You believe in source and higher power. Yeah, we believe that same thing. Find what we have in common. Okay.
He's saying that if you can't find that, it's that your mind has been misguided. And we see that, of course, that people influence others. Why do people take on hostile ideologies? They become influenced by someone. It generally has something to do with their own sense of identity, right? And then we become misguided and we get lost. Therefore, he called it. He said these are monogathan, or Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita calls this monogathan, a mental concoction generated in the mind. There's in the second chapter, there's this verse 255. Krishna says, when a person gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, when they realize that it's nothing external is going to give me happiness. And he says that these desires, he calls them monogathan, which arise out of mental concoction. There's no truth in them. It's just something that exists only in my mind. He says, when one's mind is thus purified and one finds satisfaction in the self alone, right? Actually, my nature is happiness. My nature is satisfaction. Then they're said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So our mind is concocting, you need this to be happy. And as soon as you're thinking like that, you're thinking, this person is my friend if they're satisfying that, or this person is my enemy if they're in any way interfering with that external happiness. So, but all of this just exists in the mind. It has no true existential reality. It's just thoughts passing through the mind. Monogathan.
So good.
Yeah.
All right, so this is text 10.
10.
In former times, there were many fools like you. I wonder how his father took that one. There were many fools like you who did not conquer the 6 enemies that steal away the wealth of the body. These fools were very proud, thinking, I have conquered all the enemies in the 10 directions. But if a person is victorious over 6 enemies and is equipoised towards all living entities, for him there are no enemies. Enemies are merely imagined by one in ignorance. This reminds me of Rudyard Kipling, how he must have just run into these sages and like, wow, this is, we're quoting
the wealth that they have.
He was running into sages and people were ascetics and detached, and like it must have blown his Western way of thinking. Like, oh, I get it. There's another type of success. We have this material metric of what success is. What is actually genuine success? This is all these verses. Can I get rid of the concept of friends and enemies and just see in an equipoise way, everyone's part of God? What a relief. What a relief when you're walking around, when you have no enemies, no anger, no people, no resentment in your mind. What peace.
Then you have the real wealth. Yeah. Here it's just as we were just saying that it's illusory to think that my happiness will be derived from any external source. I must look within to find happiness, which is my nature. Here again, we're getting an indication that rather looking without, look within. I see enemies without. Don't see the enemies without. Look within and find the enemies within. And it mentions 6, and there are 2 groups of 6 that are spoken of when we speak of the 6 enemies, and Prabhupada speaks of them both in the commentary. You want to read that?
Why don't you read it?
Srila Prabhupada writes, in this material world, everyone thinks that he has conquered his enemies. Just think of the enemies that, I mean, the person that he's saying this to, Hiranyakashipu, he was the person, imagine the pride that he took in conquering external enemies, right? Indra
Sure.
and all the devas. As well as he thought of himself as the most self-disciplined man, you know, like, look at the intense austerities that he performed. You know, he's saying, I am the man that knows how to conquer enemies. Nobody conquers enemies better than me, right? Okay, so Prabhupada writes, in this material world, everyone thinks that he's conquered his enemies, not understanding that his enemies are his uncontrolled mind and 5 senses. Mana, Shastran, Indriyani, Prakriti, Sthani, Karshini. That's a Bhagavad Gita quote that we're struggling with the 6 senses, which include the mind. In this material, so that's one group of 6, the 5 senses, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses in the mind, which is the center of them all. And then he goes on, in this material world, everyone has become a servant of the senses. Originally, everyone is a servant of Krishna, but in ignorance, one forgets this, and thus one is engaged in the service of Maya, of illusion, through lusty desires. Here's the next 6. Lusty desires, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and jealousy. Everyone is actually dependent on the reactions of the material laws, but still one thinks himself independent and thinks he has conquered all directions. In conclusion, one who thinks that he has many enemies is an ignorant man, whereas one who is in Krishna consciousness knows that there are no enemies, but those within oneself, the uncontrolled mind and senses.
Now, if you really opt into this, if you really feel like, yeah, that's me, I don't have any enemies. Guess what? Krishna, if you're sincere, Krishna is going to start sending you enemies. Krishna is going to start having people do things to you in your life that you'd be like, wait a second, why would you do that to me? Who are you? Who do you think you are? And he's going to put you in the situation where you're going to have to actually work these things out, untie the knots of our mind. We might be in a place right now where I've got no enemies in my life. Well, maybe you're not sincere. Once you get sincere in your bhakti, the universe starts to throw people at you that agitate you, that fry you out, that burn you down, that take pot shots at you, that accuse you of things you're not even guilty of, not because they're bad people. It's because Krishna wants us to really start to polish. It's like we have this tarnished old piece of silver and we want to just polish it and make it shine. And that's what we're working on. That's why all of our work is internal work. All of our work is, how can I raise my standard even higher? Don't think that all these external things coming at me are against me. They're actually completely for me. They're for my evolution. Krishna is sending you things. This happens to devotees when they become really sincere. He starts throwing them hurdles. He starts throwing them glue traps to get stuck in. And when I want to get frustrated at everything, we have to internalize it all. It sounds really great, me saying this right now. But the real test is when I get caught in the glue trap myself, am I doing this? Am I starting to shift my mind, or am I lashing out at others? When I want to lash out at others, I know that I've been tricked. I know I'm off my spiritual trajectory. I'm sort of, my car is off my tires are caught in the mud on the side of the road. Okay.
Okay, we're out of time right now, but thank you for that. But so those are the 4 verses from Prahlad. And before we end today, I just wanted to mention that yesterday, great soul passed on.
Yeah, Gopal Krishna Goswami.
Gopal
Did
Krishna
you ever
Goswami.
meet him?
Only one time, but he was a person that he met Srila Prabhupada in 1968, I believe, in Montreal. He was he was like um, like a student in Delhi, graduate, and then went to school in Montreal, I guess. And then he had a job in the advertising agency, in an advertising agency. And early on, as a married man, he was very instrumental in the development of the origin of bhakti spreading in the Western world.
Mm.
Gave his life to Srila Prabhupada. Eventually, he took sannyas, and he became one of the most influential spiritual leaders in India. Modi just released a whole statement,
Oh, wow.
praising him and so on. And truly a life given selflessly. What was
Very
that?
impressive.
Over 54 years ago or something like that, 55 years ago, he met Prabhupada, and basically he just gave everything, beautiful, beautiful example of surrender.
Yeah, very impressive. And our love goes out to all of the disciples. He had so many students all over the world, but especially in India. But very impressive. This is going to be a powerful decade because a lot of these people really promoted Krishna consciousness, especially in the Western world where there was nothing. It was just like barren. They're all getting up into their late 70s and 80s. So it's going to be a whole decade of tears we're going to go through. These great souls are departing this world. Oh, Mara, what do you got for takeaways for us today?
I got some good stuff today.
Good, because it's a new week and we need some good takeaways for the week.
All right. Our worth doesn't lie in our temporary designation. It lies in our intrinsic connection to God.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mara.
Thank you, guys. Equality happens on the spiritual platform.
That's right.
That's real equality anyway. Everything else is false equality. Oh, we're sort of equal. Yeah, we're all equal. You're not equal at all. You're not equal at all, except on a spiritual level.
We are meant to mature and transform to recognize divinity without sectarianism.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite the T-shirt, but
Very boring
important.
T-shirt.
We
I
need
would
some
I
t-shirts in
wouldn't
the
wear that.
How we use our God-given gifts is our free will.
that's right.
Yeah.
This is a good one. We have no enemies except our uncontrolled, misguided mind.
Ooh, that's a baseball hat.
I was going to get that as a tattoo.
Isn't it interesting that we created baseball hats in America? That's one thing we got go. We've created baseball hats. Like
Did
no one
we?
had baseball hats before us. I don't think.
Did we create them?
Did we create them?
Yeah.
I personally didn't create them, but
No,
yeah,
it's American.
I don't think they were anywhere else in the world.
Good point, Raghunath. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Back to our takeaways. Everything we've
But now
got,
everybody wears them.
everything we've got is from the mercy of others, even baseball.
Even
hats.
baseball hats.
Realize it's all coming from God to enter the spiritual realm.
Okay.
What did truckers wear before baseball hats?
Why
Maybe
do
there weren't truck. There were
Why
no
do truckers
trucks.
The
need
baseball was around before trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's okay.
search out the common ground and there's no room for hate?
Okay.
Okay.
Once you're sincere, Krishna sends you enemies.
Great.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting because baseball hats, it's like they're not for baseball anymore. Most people just wear caps that have nothing to do with baseball. What would they be wearing if it wasn't for the baseball cap?
I'm sure it'd be some other kind of cap. Mara?
And
And
Just think it's interesting.
all the hurdles and glue traps are for our evolution.
okay.
Maybe we're like I have a Kubota hat or a Ford hat. What would that be on a derby if it wasn't for baseball caps? Where would I wear that?
Let it go, Raghunath.
What
Just-
other hat would I have worn? Well, because people wear hats. People like hats.
Yeah, there were all kind of hats, Raghunath. People had a
I
plenty
know,
of
but
hats.
what else? If it wasn't for the baseball cap, what kind of hat would we wear?
They wore hats like all the other ones, Raghunath. Like,
Visors. We'd wear. Maybe,
Fishing hat.
we would
like
wear
those fishing
ten.
hats.
Yeah, fishing hats. Maybe we'd all.
They had
wear
like
those
that
fishing hats.
AC/DC hat that you got.
AC/DC.
Oh, you know that hat that you got
Yeah,
in
like
Italy?
little caps.
The guy in AC/DC wears. You know
You
that.
know, everybody wore hats before. Then when John F. Kennedy came, then he just stopped wearing hats. It like killed the hat industry.
Was Kennedy that did it?
Kennedy did it. He stopped wearing hats. Every president before that wore hats.
Really?
You know how I know this? I was born in I was raised in Danbury,
Darkness.
Connecticut. It was the hat. It was a hat center of the hub of hat world.
Really?
We'll find all this hat. We'll come here to escape the hat.
We come to escape hat talk.
See?
Listen, everybody. Yeah, Danbury. Our football team was called the Danbury Hatters.
All right, we got some information here from Greg.
Okay, Greg the Gay says in 1860, the Brooklyn Excelsior wore the ancestor of the modern rounded top baseball cap, which featured a long peak and a button on top. And by the 1900s, the Brooklyn-style cap became popular. The merino cap, topped with a star-like pattern, was made by the New York sporting goods company Peck and Snyder.
Oh, Peck and Snyder.
Old Peck and Snyder. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a good show. It's going to be a good week. I can feel it in my bones. If you haven't got, if you got my book and read it or finished it and didn't read, or even if you didn't finish it, I want you to go to Amazon and review it today. I need some reviews up there. Publisher gets inspired. The algorithms get inspired. And some of you have the book. Now, some of you, I want to thank all the people that doubled, tripled it, and more so. Henry bought like at least 20 copies to distribute to people. Vegan Trucker purchased a whole bunch to give out people. If you know people sitting on the fence of their spiritual life, hand them my book. Hand them any book, truthfully. Hand them the Bhagavad Gita, of course. But if you think they can relate to my story, hand them that. Radha Swami's a great story to introduce bhakti to people. Peppered with philosophical truths. And of course, go to Apple Podcasts and give us a review there. We check those out on a regular. See who's out there and listening. Thanks, everybody. It's going to be a beautiful hat. You know what? I looked to the right, and Maturananda wrote cowboy hats. Maybe we'd all be wearing cowboy hats right now. Maybe we should make a Wisdom of the Sages cowboy hat. Why do we make baseball caps? Oh, we don't.
We don't have wisdom.
We don't have Wisdom of the Sages
Baseball
baseball
cap.
cap. We should, but maybe we should make any hat. We need a hat that's a beautiful day today. Okay, you guys. Beautiful day for a beautiful day. Let the magic continue to flow in a big Harry Bow.